Fatalism by Polaris. This is the Sydney Outfit's third studio album, arriving the 1st of September via Sharptone Records. Fatalism consists of 11 tracks and is the much-anticipated follow-up to 2020's The Death of Me LP. This release, of course, does feature longtime member Ryan Sue on lead guitar. Ryan, for those unaware, sadly and unexpectedly passed away earlier this summer on the 19th of June. The band had this to say: this is the last set of complete songs that we wrote together with Ryan. This is the statement announcing Ryan's passing. And though the circumstances of their release are now framed by this tragedy, the meaning of the songs and the love we have for them has not changed. So with that in mind, we get into our review of Fatalism. And right off the top, we will not be providing a star ranking at the end of this one.
Yeah, star rankings in general are pretty silly, but it's something we do for fun. I think in the instance of this album, I don't want to demean any of the artistic creation here with something as silly as a star score, so we're just going to go ahead and skip it. So we will, though, share our thoughts on this record. But before we get to that, Marcos, what do you remember about their last release?
I remember liking it.
I remember it was a step forward because I was always a little lukewarm on their debut, and I thought they really improved upon it with The Death of Me.
The Mortal Coil had a couple of excellent songs, and I think I look at The Death of Me in the same light. I think that it's got some of their stronger songs. As an entire project, though, it didn't sit with me long. Like, I moved on from that one fairly quick. There's a couple of songs that have stayed in rotation off of that one, but for the most part, it's one of those records where I liked it, and Polaris continues to be one of those bands where I keep warming up to. And in saying all that, I think I have finally warmed up to Polaris in a much bigger way than in the past. I think that, and this was even prior to hearing the full extent of this record, it was in the singles, like suddenly everything clicked for me. This band sounded like they were firing on all cylinders. And suddenly the biggest differential, or the biggest like differentiator between that debut record, that last one, and this new one is suddenly I was really hyped for it off of the strength of those singles. So like by the time it hit our inbox, I was just like ready to hit play. And that was not the case with the last couple.
Yeah, for me in particular, it was really Inhumane that sold me, which was the debut or the go-ahead single, the first one for this record. And something about it just felt different. And I don't know why, but Polaris felt like a band who I wouldn't expect to really change or fuck with their formula in any capacity. So when I heard something from them, and it being the lead single on this record, and it feeling sort of stylistically different from what they'd done in the past, and really visually compelling with the music video especially, I was really sort of like you said, very excited to then hear this full project.
Yeah, talk about putting your best foot forward. Inhumane, like that is the moment I was hyped for this entire album, is watching that video.
Mm-hmm.
Like the effort, the money they poured into that one, like budget wise, you could tell they were really trying to push this new music, and it immediately it worked for me, right?
Yeah, and with all that being said, I think that Nightmare and Overflow are a little bit more within the range of what I'd come to expect from Polaris. But at that point, I was so won over with Inhumane that everything else just sort of felt like icing.
I'm pretty much right there with you. I actually think I've grown to prefer Nightmare of all the singles.
Really interesting.
It just has
such
such
biggest hook kind of thing. Yeah,
I think so.
For me, though, I think what's the most fascinating part of this Polaris album is how I sort of walked away with it feeling that the singles were maybe not even close to the strongest tracks on this record.
I don't think so.
Right.
And again, man, I think I walk away from that last record thinking the singles were the strongest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So huge difference right off the bat.
Same with
here.
the first record as well.
Okay, fair, yeah. I don't remember there being many deep cuts on that one that spoke too deep to me.
Exactly. So I think Harbinger sets a really like melancholic tone to sort of kick the album off with. And it's definitely kind of like setting the stage for the struggles this band is kind of like communicating, battling against that are outlined throughout this record. You know, there's a lot of like musings on death. And I think like the title of the album, like Fatalism, is sort of like implying like the life itself, like existence is fatal, you know. And this is sort of me extracting my understanding of like what the concept they're communicating here is, but it very much feels like, you know, exploring life's tragedies and struggles and like, you know, how you work your way through them. And, you know, God, it's so difficult to think of this album outside of like the real life circumstances that it's been delivered under. So it certainly does feel like it feels like an extremely heavier album in terms of its themes and topics because of those real life circumstances in ways that like maybe would not actually, I would not have actually felt them as deep if not for what happened, right?
Yeah, and it, of course it feels coincidental, and it is hard not to.
I mean, it's unfortunate, right?
Yeah. But it is hard at times not to think about what's transpired while listening to this record, and some of the songs are fitting in that way, and it's definitely a very sobering listen at times.
Yeah, I mean, you hear something like With Regards, and it feels emotionally crippling, to be honest.
Yes. And again, like, not exactly sure what or who that song is written about, but then...
Right, but it's hard not to take real life circumstances and apply them to sort of like the music that you're listening to. Like, it's impossible to separate them at that point, right? It's just something that sort of sits in the back of your mind constantly.
With Regards is a massive standout, though, and so is Aftertouch as well. Two of the songs that definitely slow things down a bit, even though they still have a bit of a bite to them.
Yeah, you know, slow things down to a degree.
Sure. I think I walk away from this record with my favorite track being Dissipate.
I'm 100% with you. Dissipate is just going to be that bitch off of this record for a lot of people. Like, it's just gnarly riffage, and like the ending breakdown just completely hits the mark. It's one of those cases where it's like, for all of the things that feel artistically exponential that this band might accomplish across this record, you really just get down to that one song that's heavier than everything else and go, well, yeah, they do that really well. Like, they do it like it's an exemplary fucking metalcore song. That was, I think hearing that song was the first time I sort of looked at this record and went, all right, you know what? I'm gonna choose the singles. Okay. Like Dissipate, I just feel like has such potential to be absolutely massive, which isn't to say that it won't still reach that. But I just, in my mind, you hear a song like that and you're like, this is the song everyone needs to hear immediately. You know what I mean?
Like everything about it, like the riffing, the drumming breakdown, the chorus is huge.
It's
it all
fucking
just
nasty.
Yeah, nasty is a great way to describe that track. And also, of course, with this being the final set of songs with Ryan on guitar, hard not to listen to this one with an ear for that guitar work. Like, specifically seeking all of those notes out. And yeah, guy was fucking talented. It is hard not to deny that.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where it's like, I really feel like I appreciated it more after the fact in a way that kind of like really bums me out, you know? Like, I wish I had been there to appreciate it more, you know, when Ryan was with us.
Yeah.
But it does feel like he really stands out on this album in a way I'm sure he really stood out on the last couple albums, but in this way that I can really appreciate now.
Yeah.
And that I'm sort of grateful for.
And I think that was the case initially with the singles too, because I remember that solo on Inhumane really standing out to me. And if you've listened to this show over the years, you'll know that I typically don't really even care for solos in much capacity. So for one to like come on and then for me to like feel it fully is sort of rare.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, guitars do sound great on this one, which shouldn't come as a surprise to a lot of this fan base.
I think All in Vain is an absolutely massive closer. It has like this very heavy air of like disillusion and despair that I think really speaks to sort of the subject matter of this album. And that one line in there, "We all deserve to be held like a memory," I think just really fucking stuck out to me. It stuck out to me in like one of the most painful ways possible. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think that lyrically there's a lot of shining moments throughout this one too. Like there, like a line like that one isn't a diamond in the rough. There's quite a few diamonds throughout this record. Definitely not much rough.
Yeah.
As far as lyricism goes.
I agree with you. I think that overall, you know, my biggest takeaways are that I think people have a lot to be excited for in terms of like what they haven't yet heard that's on this record. I think they're going to be thoroughly impressed. I think Polaris continues to build upon what they've done so far. And I think with each album, they've grown and they've become a better band. And ultimately, I think everyone should obviously check out this album as a celebration, obviously, of one of the, as far as I'm concerned, undersung talent of this scene at this point. So it felt sad, and it also felt good to listen to this album. You know,
It's extremely bittersweet. Of course, it's a really strong effort from this artist. I think a lot of people should give this one a listen, without a doubt. Like you said, deserves to be heard. So